Hi, I'm Debbie Shaw, and in this video I'd like to show you the construction of my bowling bag. Now I'll leave you the details of where you can purchase the pattern and the instructions in the description box below. I've used here a William Morris canvas fabric and Vlieslein H640 interfacing. You'll also need bias binding and a zip to go down the centre as well. But of course you can use any fabric you like. I'd use maybe a canvas or a cotton, denim would work well, a faux leather I think would look lovely. So it just fastens with one zip over the centre, and in the pattern, I don't do it in the video, but in the pattern there is a patch pocket on the inside as well. So we're going to start off by taking a look at the pattern, because it's a little bit of an unusual one, this one, and give you some advice on what type of fabrics to use. Let's get sewing. So first of all, let's take a look at your choice of fabric. For this bag, a non-directional fabric works best. However, my fabric here does have a direction, but I don't think it really matters which way around that pattern is. So the first thing to do is to fold your fabric in half, like so, and then we're going to fold it in half again. And then take your pattern piece, and it does say place on fold here and place on fold here. So the edge with the two folds is where I'm going to place the bottom of the bag, and the edge with the one fold is where I'm going to place the round section. So line those two up with the folds. You can probably arrange this a little bit so there's not quite so much wastage. I'll pop a couple of pins in here. And then cut around the edge. And save all of these because that's big enough to make a matching purse. And then when I open this up, you'll see I have that shape. So I'll need to cut another piece exactly the same using the same method from my lining fabric. And then fuse fleece to the wrong side of the outer fabric. I've also cut my two strips for the zip panel and fuse fleece to the wrong side of those, and two strips of lining fabric. I've also taken my strap fabric, and of course you can make this longer or shorter if you wanted to, and fold the long edges to the centre and press, and then in half again and press. I'll do that in just a second. Also on your instructions there is a pocket on the inside of the lining. I'm not going to put that on this time. I just wanted to really show you the construction of the outside section of the bag. So let's pop the lining over the top of the outer fabric, and I'm going to use a little bit of basting spray, my 505 spray, to secure those two pieces together. So I'll put this to one side for now while we make up the zipped section. So I'm going to place my zip facing down over one side of the outer panel and sew straight down the centre. I don't tend to put the zipper foot on my sewing machine. If I can move the needle over to the left hand side, tend to find that you don't need to do that. And I don't generally pin when I'm sewing in zips like this. Find it easier not to. Just line up the edges of the zip and the fabric. And the zips are always a little bit too long because I do like to keep the ends of those metal stoppers out of the way whilst I'm sewing. And then let's take this out and pop the lining on the opposite side. So I like to sew from this side so I can see where the stitches I've already sewn are. and sew right over the top of that same stitch line. Then I'm going to open this out, so the lining and the outer are together, and just top stitch to hold them together. So I'm just pulling the lining away from the zip and just stitch alongside the zip coil. And then we'll do exactly the same with the opposite side. Now I can trim back the excess zip. Make sure this end of the zip is open when you do that. And trim across here. And then I'm bringing the ends of the zip together, and I'm just going to sew very close to the edge just to hold the zip closed. And then take your strap, and I'm just going to sew along each side. Remember, this is folded to the center and then folded in half again, and top stitch just along each side. And then this is going to be sewn to the zip panel, facing inwards, just over the edge of the zip and within the seam allowance, so quite close to the edge. And then make sure the strap isn't twisted, and sew the second end over the opposite side of the zip. Now I'm just going to fold the zip out of the way, sorry, the handle out of the way, open the zip a little bit, and then let's go back to the main part of our bag, and we're going to sew the zip panel right sides together to the base of the bag. And again, the handle out of the way, don't want to sew over that, and right sides together, and we'll sew straight across there. So there I have the shape of the bag, so you can see how this is all going to go together now. But because I've got the raw edges on each side here, I'm going to pop some bias binding over the edge. So it's up to you whether you want to hand or machine sew this. I'm going to machine sew this, but when I come to put the binding around the rest of the seam, I'm going to machine sew it, and then I'll hand sew it afterwards, because I find I'm neater when I do it like that. So easiest way to do this one is to just fold your binding in half, give it a quick press. Same with this one. And then wrap this around the raw edge and then sew. If you wanted to pop a few clips in there to hold it in place, that may help a little bit. So we'll machine sew down here and then do the same with the other side. Right, let's get the rest of the bag put together. So I'm going to just fold this in half and make a little snip to find the center, and the same with this side. And then do the same with the zip section so we can match those points. So bring the side of the bag up to the lining, matching those center points, and pop a pin in. You may find this easier to actually fit if you have the zip open, and plenty of pins to hold this in place. And then what I like to do is to just turn this through and check the seam and just make sure that I'm happy with it and that I've caught all of the layers, because this eventually or ultimately is going to form the shape of the bag. So I want that to be a nice round smooth seam, and I'm happy with that. So then let's turn it back inside out again. There we go. And do, move the strap out of the way, do exactly the same with the opposite side. So we're going to pin, lots of pins all the way around, and then sew. And now to finish off, let's pop some bias binding all around the edge. So, and I've cut that a little bit too long for now. And overlap the ends by around about 1/2 inch. Open out the binding. Oh, if you need to trim any of this wadding back, by the way, then no harm in doing that if you find that helpful. And then I'm going to sew just along the first side of the binding, and I'm going to try and keep the stitches the same as on the bag, because obviously if I'm going to sew the binding further in, that's going to change the shape of the bag. It'll make it a bit smaller. So let's pop that on there. And under the machine. So again, I find it easier not to pin. Don't pull the binding too taut, because it will stretch. So just gently ease it around the curve. Nice smooth line. Until we come down to the other side. Now if you're brave or confident, you could machine sew in the same way as we did the little bits at the edge. So just fold the fabric over and machine sew it in place. I much prefer to hand sew, because although it takes a little bit longer, I think you see the benefits. I think it looks neater, and I can be more accurate when I do it that way. So again, just keep feeding that under the machine. And back down to the end. And again, no harm in just turning it over and just making sure that everything's looking good from the outside, because after all, that's what you're going to be looking at. And then snip the end off there, and then take a needle and thread and wrap the binding over the edge. And again, if you do find that your seam allowance is a little bit bulky, trim that back. Let's fold this over the edge and then hand sew. Now I'm only going to catch the lining with my stitches. I'm not going to sew all the way through to the front, because I don't want to risk seeing these stitches on the outside of the bag. So when it comes to the end here, I'm just going to fold under the edge of the binding and then fold it over, and then push the needle inside to hide the knot, and go into the lining and out through the fold of the binding. And then as I'm coming up to the end here, I'll just fold in the raw edge to finish it off. So that's it. Let's tie a little knot on the end here. And then we'll do exactly the same with the opposite side. Right, now let's turn this the right side out. Let's see how we're looking. There, all done. Now I've got a little bit of a tip for you. If you want to iron the seam and make it a little bit more crisp, it is quite difficult to do because it's three-dimensional. But if you steam over the seam, get that nice and warm, and then while it's still warm, pinch it. And you'll find that you get a nice crisp edge. There we go, so plenty of steam. Pinch. And just go all the way around like that. Obviously be careful not to burn your fingers, just get hot. Okay, nice bit of steam. And that is another bag finished. So I hope you find the tutorial helpful, and I hope you enjoy making yours in whatever fabrics you choose to make it in. I think it's going to look amazing, and although it's a small bag, it is actually quite a good size. You can fit a lot in there. I'll see you again next time.